Ginger Duncan, and I work in the leadership development, leadership coaching space, and I coach and work with leaders at all levels. So from the new leader all the way to the C-suite. Thank you so much for being with me today. Today we're going to talk about building influence. As we start today, I want us to think about this equation. I want you to think about the equation E plus R equals 0. You ever heard of that? It means event plus response equals outcome. Which one of those three do you think you have the most control over? Do you always have control over events in your life? What about the responses to those events or the outcomes? Well, as we talk about influence today, I want you to think about having 100% control over your response. How do you respond to events in your life? By taking 100% control or accountability for the way you respond, you will then, in turn, influence the outcome that you get. And then in turn, with later events in your life, even influence the events based on your response, the outcome, and then subsequent events later in your life. So I want you to think about that today as we talk about how you build influence. How are you responding now? Are you getting the outcome you want? Or is there something else you'd rather see? And if so, it's time to change your response. As we talk about influencers, I want you to think about people in your life that have had a lot of influence. So what are those characteristics that they had? What did they do? How did they do it? What behaviors did they demonstrate? What kind of style did they use? What was it about them that made you want to follow them or made them an influencer? What are those attributes? A lot of influencers possess creativity. And creativity, what I mean by that, I mean openness to learn, to growth. They're very open to asking questions, seeking to understand, wanting to look at other people's perspective and find a great solution. So they're very innovative and open. They're not so closed around my way or the highway. And so when we think about influencers today, I want you to think about that. How creative have you been in changing your responses? Are there other ways you could do to get a better outcome? French and Raven did some research back in the 50s, so a long time ago, on bases of power. And what they said is there's 5 bases of power that people demonstrate to influence over others or to influence others. One is coercion. So do what I say because I'm your boss or I'm your mom or your dad or whatever. Do as I say. Rewards. That could be giving you rewards like a bonus at work, a prize, internal rewards or intrinsic rewards as well. Legitimacy, so meaning you have legitimate power. People just believe in you because of the way you are. There's something about you that people want to follow you. So you've kind of proven yourself. People trust you. Another one is referent, and referent is you're my boss, therefore you have power. So I just kind of, I just assume that I'm going to do what you say. And then the last is expertise, and that is you have power or influence because you have knowledge, and you have knowledge you share with me, and because of that, I'm influenced by what you do. About 7 years ago, French and Raven added one more power base, and that was information. And they said information is very, very powerful. So people can either share information or they can choose to withhold information. And that's definitely a power base. So when we look at the power bases in building influence, we're going to talk about 2 different camps. The first camp is what's called push. So push influence style. A push influence style is when I'm pushing information on you. So I'm proposing information, I'm giving you information, I'm either blocking or shutting you out of information like we just talked about. It's very much me driven. So I'm driving the influence. So when you think about French and Raven, you would think about more coercion, even expertise. I've got information, so I'm going to share more with you, sometimes referent and sometimes legitimate. So it's very much I'm pushing information. The other type of camp with influence is around pull influence style. So I'm not pushing information on you, I'm actually pulling you towards something. So that's around characteristics of that style are asking questions, seeking information, wanting to know what you want, what direction you want, what sounds good to you, testing understanding. So I'm giving you information, I'm like, does that make sense to you? What would you like to see? And then building relationships. So this would be more, when you think about French and Raven, this would be more around the legitimate power, maybe intrinsic rewards, maybe even expertise, because I'm pulled to you because you have information. But it's much more You're pulled to me and I'm not pushing information on you. So when you think about kind of the best case scenario in building influence, it's more about finding a balance. So what does that balance need to look like? If you're working with somebody or giving people information that don't have a lot of information, you want to push more. You want to give more information. You want to share. If you're working with somebody that their style is they like to be included more, or they have a lot of influence, or they have a lot of positional power, you want to do more pull. You don't want to push. Pushing too much will set you up to fail, right? Because people will think you're not listening to me. And so it's very important to think about push and pull and who the people are you're working with or trying to influence when deciding on a style. A lot of times what I use is something called a stakeholder analysis. A stakeholder analysis is when I'm planning a conversation, when I'm trying to influence someone or a very important conversation, I want to think about who are the stakeholders, who are the people that could be influenced or impacted by a decision I'm making, and how do I influence them? Are they someone in positional power? If they are, I'm probably not going to push too hard. Are they someone that doesn't have a lot of information on this? So I'm actually going to push more because I need to give them a lot of information. Are they an expert? So maybe I'm just going to consult more with them. How will they be impacted and what will that look like? And that's how I decide how I'm going to have my conversation and how I'm going to influence. I'm going to think through and plan the conversation. What could their concerns be? How much involvement would they want? How much information do they need? You know, what do I need from them and what do they need from me in a way that leads to mutual gain or mutual purpose? So I want to align myself with their values, their priorities, and their interests. That's how I influence people. So what do they value? What do they like? And if I don't know, I'm going to ask them, hey, we're going to be working together on this project. What is it you really like? How do you like to work together? What do you like? What do you not like? What would you like to see? What would you not like to see? How do you want to be communicated with? What would be a win for you? And I'm going to align myself with them so I can be successful in influencing their direction and influencing our relationship in a positive way that leads to mutual gain for both of us. So it's not just about me. A lot of times we think when we're trying to influence someone, we think, what would we like? And we try to influence them that way. Well, that doesn't always work because they may see things completely different or have complete different needs than you. So I want to think about what are those behaviors that I'm demonstrating that make the relationship stronger. When I look at relationships that are really strong, I see two areas that people focus on. One is on information. So how do I share information? What information might they need from me? I don't want to give them too much. I don't want to give them too little. So thinking through that stakeholder analysis, what would be helpful? And then I think about relationships. So what do they need from me? When they get quiet, am I going to ask them a question? I noticed you got really quiet when I asked you to serve on that committee. Is there something wrong? Do you have a concern you want to share with me? So I'm going to try to build that relationship. The one thing I'm not going to want to do is demonstrate what's called self-oriented behavior, or something I like to call is SOB behavior. SOB behavior is any behavior that I demonstrate that serves my needs and only mine. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm bringing them into this decision so they feel like they're a part of it. When you can use self-oriented behaviors when you're in a position of power. But again, I would warn you, if you're in a positional power and you only use that type of behavior, you'll get compliance, but you won't get buy-in and support and sustained results. So in thinking about how to persuade people and the push-pull, what's persuasive is when you're open to persuasion yourself. So if somebody, has feedback for you around something you're sharing and it's not positive, and you can say, wow, I never saw it that way. Thanks for sharing that with me. Showing interest in how they see things, describing information and your reasoning around it, and asking questions. What am I missing? What do you think? How do you feel about this? What's not persuasive when you're trying to influence is making arguments. So I'm right and I expect you to do what I say. Or I shared this with you and you gave me feedback that wasn't completely positive, and so I get mad. Or pushing them to be persuaded. I need you to believe what I believe, always. So what you want to think about is you want to think about behaviors that are that are more other-oriented or we, so not self-oriented. Self-oriented behaviors are really about your ego, and it's about your self-interest and your self-preservation. So when you want to build influence with others, you want to build trust. You want to cultivate reliability through consistency. So you do what you say what you do. You're assertive, but you're not aggressive. You're very clear about the direction, but you don't fight. You're flexible, you're personal, you pay attention to those maintenance-oriented behaviors. You focus on actions, not just words. You ask questions to understand, and you really listen to others. What do they want? And you give them that. When I'm working with somebody or coaching someone or talking to them about goals and changes they're wanting to make in their life, I always like to use the 5% rule. The 5% rule says if you just did 5% differently in this area or 5% more in this area, what would that look like? A lot of times when we're thinking about building competencies or learning a new skill, we think about these huge goals and they're not even sustainable because we have families and work and social life, and you just can't do it. And it feels like defeating when you can't accomplish it because it's so big. So I always like to say, when you're working on something, give yourself 5% rule. What if you did, starting tomorrow, if you were to take 5% more responsibility in increasing your level of influence in your relationships, what would that be? What would the 1 or 2 actions you would take? For example, maybe you would ask more questions to see what other people are feeling and how they think. Maybe you would do a stakeholder analysis. You would say, who's at stake in this decision? How do I need to involve them? What do I need to do going forward? So I want you to think about that. I want you to do a 30-day challenge, and I want you to act as if you had 100% control over all your responses, E plus R equals O. And I want you to apply a 5% rule. I want you to come up with a goal. You're going to do 5% more in this area to grow in the area of influence. And I want you to keep a habit journal. A habit journal is what do you do daily? And I want you to picture yourself, your future self, journaling. You want to set intention. I'm going to build my influencing skills. You're going to stop the autopilot. The autopilot is the things that you're doing now that you've built habits around that aren't helping you, that aren't leading to better outcomes on your E plus R equals O. And I want you to write in the present tense. So if you were going to do set a goal around building influence, and maybe your one goal is I'm going to start asking more questions with the people I'm working with instead of directing them. What are those questions going to be? And you're going to write it in present tense. Today, I asked these questions in our team meeting to build influence. So I want you to try 30 days, act as if you have complete control over all your responses. You're working 5% in the area of building influence. And I want you to keep that journal. And I want you to think about what will you do starting tomorrow differently to increase your level of influence than you did today. Thank you so much.